Before you've said a single lie, your body already told the truth. Scientists collected sweat and breath from people under real psychological stress. No words spoken, no faces shown, just the air coming off their skin, and had dogs sort it from calm samples sitting right next to it. The dogs were right, 93.75% of the time. Not because they could see you sweat, because they could smell the version of you that you can't control. Somewhere right now, a dog is watching someone wind up to throw a ball that isn't there. The arm goes back, the hand stays closed. And the dog, supposedly food-motivated, easily fooled, running on instinct, doesn't move an inch. It already knows. This isn't a story about smart dogs. Every species on this list has been quietly doing something you were told was uniquely human, reading the gap between what you say and what's true. Not from your words, from the parts of you that never learned how to lie. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what signal you're sending and why something has probably already caught it. Here's what you believe about lying to animals. That it's easy. You've done it 100 times. You've said just 1 second and left for an hour. You've hidden a pill inside a piece of cheese and watched it disappear like the dog never noticed. You've faked a tennis ball throw just to watch the dog sprint after nothing and laughed because it seemed to work. It seemed to work. That phrase is doing more damage than you think. Because the entire idea of fooling an animal rests on a human assumption that deception is a performance, and performances can be judged only on the outside. Say the right words, hold the right posture, keep your face still, and the lie holds. That's how it works with us. We built entire industries, poker, negotiation, dating on the belief that a controlled face is a successful lie. But a dog was never grading your face. A raven was never listening to your words. What they were reading the whole time was a channel you didn't know you had open. Your scent chemistry shifting under stress. The half-second delay between intention and action. The subtle difference between a body that has thrown 100 good throws and a body that hasn't. You can train your face. You cannot train your sweat glands. So the real question isn't, can animals be fooled? Some of them, sometimes, obviously can. The real question is narrower and much stranger. Is there a category of lie, a plain, physical, involuntary one, that you are incapable of telling to anything? With a nose, a memory, or enough time spent watching you? The research says yes. And it starts with the simplest test anyone ever ran on a dog, pointing at nothing and watching how fast trust dies. Picture the setup. 2 containers. 1 dog, 1 person crouched between them. The person points at the left container. The dog goes, finds food, eats it, dogs trust. Pointing almost automatically. It's one of the oldest bridges between our species. Then the setup changes. Now the dog can see both containers are empty before the person points again, and the person points at the empty one anyway. The first time, most dogs still follow the finger. Old habits. But run the trial again, and something shifts fast. Dogs stop crossing the room for a pointing hand they've already caught being wrong. Researchers studying this, what's called the unreliable informant paradigm, found the drop-off isn't gradual conditioning. It's closer to a switch. 1 bad tip, and the finger stops meaning anything. That alone would be a decent video. But a follow-up study went further. And this is where it stops being about broken trust and starts being about mind reading. Researchers ran nearly 260 dogs through a task where a person watched food get hidden, then watched someone else secretly move it so the person's belief about where the food was now flat out wrong. When that misinformed person still pointed confidently at the food's original, empty spot, the dogs followed the tip far more than when the person had watched the whole switch and pointed at the empty spot on purpose. Read that again slowly, because it's not intuitive. The dogs weren't just tracking whether the pointing hand was reliable. They were tracking whether the person behind the hand could have known better. A confidently wrong human, one who genuinely believed the lie, got more trust than a human who knew and pointed anyway. The dog wasn't grading the finger. It was grading what was going on behind the person's eyes. That's the crack in the animals are simple story. And it's only the beginning of how deep this goes. Here's the part that turns this from dogs are observant into something closer to unsettling. Take a dog that has watched a stranger throw a ball, really throw it, hard and far, more than once. Now take a different dog that watched the same stranger throw badly, weakly, barely past their own feet. Bring both dogs back later, and have that same stranger fake a throw at each of them. Arm goes back, nothing leaves the hand. The exact same motion both times. The dog that remembered the strong thrower still bolts forward, chasing a ball that was never launched. The dog that remembered the weak thrower barely moves. The action was identical. What differed was memory of competence built from watching days or trials earlier. The dog wasn't reacting to what the arm did in that moment. It was reacting to a private model it had built of this specific human, and running the fake throw through that model before its paws ever left the ground. That's the twist hiding under all of this. It was never really about catching a lie in the moment. It's about the fact that animals build a running account of you, competent or not, truthful or not, and that account outlasts any single performance you put on in front of them. Which brings the story back to smell, and to something a research team at Queen's University Belfast set up almost like a lie detector for the body. They took sweat and breath samples from people doing a stressful task, and only kept samples from people whose blood pressure and heart rate had actually spiked. So the stress was real, not imagined. Dogs were given those samples next to a calm baseline from the same person. No faces, no voices, just air. And the dogs picked the stress sample correctly 93.75% of the time. The number from the very top of this video. And now you know exactly where it came from. It gets stranger. A separate study found that dogs exposed to the scent of a stressed stranger, someone they'd never met, became more pessimistic in an unrelated task, more hesitant to approach a bowl that might or might not have food in it. The stress wasn't even about them. It leaked out of one nervous system and quietly recalibrated another. So when someone says a dog just knows when something's wrong, they're closer to literally correct than they realize. Not knows like a hunch. Knows like a chemical signal. Arriving before your voice does. Past the part of you that's in charge of what story you're telling. If this were only true of dogs, you could file it under 10,000 years of domestication. Of course they read us. But the deception detection story doesn't stay in the house. Ravens cache food, bury it, hide it, come back for it later, and other ravens steal from those caches constantly. Researchers led by Thomas Bugnyar found that a caching raven changes its behavior sharply depending on who's watching. In front of a dominant bird that doesn't yet know where the food is, the cacher will delay, misdirect, even search fake spots, apparently working to keep the real location unreadable. That's not an animal reacting to a lie. That's an animal managing what another animal is allowed to learn, arguably laying the groundwork for deception, not just detecting it, which flips the whole premise on its head. This was never a one-way story of humans deceiving animals and animals catching us. Some of these species run the exact same game against each other, using the same tools: withheld information, misdirection, calculated timing. Now, it would be satisfying to end this act with a clean third example: horses reading a fake human smile the way dogs read a fake throw. And you'll find that claim online, stated flatly. The real research is more careful than that, and worth sitting with. Horses do show clear, measurable reactions to human facial expressions, faster heart rate, a distinct gaze shift toward angry faces in photos, different responses to angry versus happy vocal tones. That part is well established. But when researchers specifically tested whether horses could tell a genuine expression from a synthetic one using an android face built to isolate that exact variable, the evidence didn't hold up. Horses reacted to the robot face, but not in a way that showed they were catching the fake. That's the honest edge of the science, and it's worth pointing at directly, instead of smoothing over. It doesn't mean horses are less perceptive than dogs. It means the popular version of the story, horses can tell when you're faking it, is reaching for a punchline the data hasn't earned yet. What the evidence actually supports is narrower and, in a way, more interesting. Horses aren't grading your performance at all. They're responding to something underneath it: posture, vocal tone, physiological state. The same category of leak that gives dogs away in a sweat sample. The lie detection isn't about spotting the fake. It's about not needing to look at the fake in the first place, because the real signal was never in your face to begin with. So go back to that dog at the very beginning, the one that didn't move for a fake throw. It wasn't reading your arm. It wasn't even really reading this moment. It was reading a file it had already built on you. Every real throw, every real walk, every real, I'll be back, cross-referenced against what your body is doing right now, chemically, involuntarily, in real time. You were never being watched by something simpler than you. You were being read by something that had simply stopped listening to your words a long time ago, because your words were the least reliable part of you. That's not a comforting thought, and it's not supposed to be. But it's a strangely clarifying one. The species around you, the ones curled up on your couch, the ones in the trees outside, the ones you'll never fully domesticate, were never impressed by your ability to lie well. They were just quietly better than you at reading the one part of the conversation you didn't know you were having. If your dog has ever looked at you like it already knew, tell that story in the comments. I want to hear the moment you realized you weren't as convincing as you thought. And if this is the kind of question you want asked again, subscribe, because there's a lot more of what we can't hide from the animals around us.